Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sports Section, Long Island's longest-running call-in sports program. But, of course, during COVID, the callers are the hosts. I'm Matt Mankiewich, Zach Wilson, Mike Anderson, here until midnight. Joseph Cole will be joining us later on as well, where we get to talk about the Seawolves and everything else going on in the world of sports. But big week coming up, big week past for the Stony Brook Seawolves. Not all of it going the Seawolves' way, guys, but some of it. Women's lacrosse, they still haven't lost in 5 years in the America East. That continues. The baseball team pulled out a couple good ones, but they've got some issues, especially leading up to the tournament. Still got 3 weeks left in the regular season, but still some problems that need to be addressed. Men's lacrosse, them I'm worried about. But, Zach, let's start with the most successful team at Stony Brook right now, women's lacrosse. And they're set for glory once again. They will host the America East tournament again, like they did in 2019. But unlike 2019, the men will not be joining them. But let's start with that game on Saturday. Stony Brook Seawolves. The winning streak continues. The winning ways continue. And what more can you say about Taryn Miller?
I have no idea what more to say about her other than she is really looking like quite the player that her older sister Kylie was when she was with the program. Of course, nobody's ever going to probably be as big as Kylie O'Miller was for Stony Brook, but that has not changed the fact that Joe Spallina, ever since he came to Stony Brook in 2012, what starts off as one of the nation's biggest turnarounds from 2011 when they had quite the losing record to going 14-5 overall the next season. Then after that, it's just been one America East regular season title and NCAA tournament appearance after the other. It's been going on for a long time that kids on Long Island who are in the third grade have not lived in a world where Laval Stadium or Stony Brook women's lacrosse has not been an America East regular season title. That just shows how successful and why Stony Brook is continuing to stay one of the top teams in the nation for almost 10 years.
Well, yeah, because they've owned the conference. It's been a little bit to their detriment because what does everybody say now? Oh, yeah, you're supposed to beat all those teams. Well, they're on the schedule. We play. We win. That's it. But when it comes to tournament seeding time, we can be a little bit ahead of ourselves. We can say that we hope they don't get the shaft in the NCAA tournament, but they have to get there. And that's what's next. Thursday and Saturday, America East semis, America East final. All will be held at Laval Stadium, so we're going to bring it all to you. And we'll get into the issue we're going to have with the men, namely that we will have the women's semifinal, but we can't bring you the men because they're going to be playing at the same time at UMBC, but that's for later. Let's concentrate on the women. Taryn Miller, the 9-point day. Allie Kennedy, a hat trick before. I believe they pulled her out of the game because the game got out of control. So,
well, they did this so, I mean, taking out Allie Kennedy when you have a big lead is not any concern whatsoever because that just means that you know you're going to win, and that just gives backup players. Yeah, you're just giving back. Yeah, you give her the chance to rest for the next game, apparently, and you get other backup players like Kira Acetella, Evan McQuarrie, and Lexi Correra. Those players are not big, but they get time after the stars are done for the day, leading their team to what is going to be an eventual win with, 8 minutes left to go? Or something like that?
Yeah, well, this game, as we said, has been routine for the Seawolves, but the final score against UMBC, of course, was 18-7, I believe, yes. And in the box score? Well, you do, of course, have some other players in the individual stats. Megan Halchuk picked up a goal. Lily Kennedy had 3 points, goal and 2 assists. They also, that's on the UMBC side, but on the Stony Brook side, here we go. You got Raina Sabella with a goal, Siobhan Rafferty with 2 goals and assists, Taryn Oldmiller with 9 points, 8 goals and an assist, Ali Kennedy with a hat trick, Bridget Considine, goal and 2 assists, Kira Acetel, as you said, with a goal, Kaylin Hart with a goal, Sarah Poulos, goal and 2 assists. So you get to distribute the scoring a little bit and also get the freshmen and sophomores some important late season action. Because what's next for the Stony Brook Seawolves is the America East Tournament. And that will take place, as we said, Thursday, May 6th, 3:30, 3:15 broadcast time against UMBC, the 4 seed. So they get them again.
Yes, so I think it's going to be probably the same key to Thursday's semifinal game for Joe Spallina and the squad that they had to be very completely aware of when they won yesterday, which was watch out for that senior goalie in Lexi Roberts, who despite having given up a lot of goals to Stony Brook on Saturday, she was able to muster up a lot of saves as well. And along with that, you get that dangerous sophomore midfielder in Megan Halchuk, who has been working up the draw controls like nobody's business, has already set the program record this year for the most draw controls in a season. That's just going to make Charlotte Verhulst's job to win the draw controls for players like Ali Kennedy, Ellie Macera, who has been recently picking up draw controls off of the faceoffs that Verhulst has worked for recently, and as well as playing defense. The only thing I always say is that sometimes Stony Brook can make it pretty close in like the first 10 minutes or so, but eventually they pull away, and if that's what it looks like, then I wouldn't expect anything too less out of the result for Thursday's game. It could be the same result. It could be a little closer because of UMBC trying to learn, but I'm still expecting Stony Brook to once again get into those double-digit goals and probably be close to 20 again.
So, not a lot to worry about with the women's lacrosse team. They're clicking all cylinders and ready to defend their America East title once again.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure it's...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm certain that it looks like at this point Stony Brook is once again ready to clinch their 8th straight America East title. The only question is going to be on everybody's minds after the America East title is where they're going to be seated. And I got a feeling that the best case scenario for the women's lacrosse team is being at least a top 8 seed. The top 8 seeds do get to host the first and second round, depending on what the committee is going to look at as far as the COVID regulations and rules for how they're going to address that. But the only thing that is remaining the same still is that the national semifinals and national championship will still be played at the Johnny United Center in Towson. Stony Brook was already there earlier this season. Well, not at this stadium. They're at a different field when they played the Towson Tigers in a very close game. But there's no doubt in my mind that Spallina once again wants to bring his team back to Towson for the second time this season.
Okay, so the other semifinal will pit Albany versus Vermont, the 2-3. That will take place after the first game, the first semi that the Seawolves are in. And that will be at 6:30 at Laval, as we said. And, of course, the winners will meet at 1 p.m. on Saturday, May 8th, 12:45 WUSB start if Stony Brook advances. And as we say, that chances are very good. So we'll bring that to you as well from Laval Stadium. Now, again, COVID could come into play here. One of the problems that everybody had, including the Seawolves, was putting together a non-conference schedule. And the non-conference schedule in the Seawolves case involved top-ranked North Carolina and second-ranked Syracuse, and those are the only 2 losses of the year. They did beat BU and USC, but now the common knock on Stony Brook has always been, you're in a weak conference. Of course you're going to beat up on everybody. And then somebody will say you don't play anybody, or the people you did play, you lost to. You lost to the top 2 teams in the country. So you're not one of the top 2 teams in the country.
That much is obvious.
Anticipating every scenario here. And after they got the shaft a couple of years back when they were number 1 all year long and get a 5th seed, I'm just wondering what other excuse they're going to come up with this time.
Well, we're going to have to wait and see for ourselves, because by this time next week, we will learn of the women's lacrosse team's fate as it pertains to where they'll be seated should they once again be guaranteed an at-large bid or an auto bid into the NCAA tournament. And given their ranking, we shouldn't expect anything less of them being able to make it into the tournament. But for them to clinch a first and second round bye has to be finishing off the America East Championship all the way to Saturday, so they can keep up that winning streak and not give the committee any more reasons to think why they aren't that strong enough. They just need to continue to win impressively. That's all it takes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And,
Go ahead, Mike.
the women's lacrosse team is definitely Stony Brook's pride and joy in the athletic department. As good as some of the other teams are, they are video game numbers type dominant. But with that being said, there is another lacrosse team on campus, the men's lacrosse team.
Yes.
Matt, I'm going to throw it to you. What do you have to say about the men's lacrosse team, who you got to watch play a couple of days ago live?
Well, I didn't get a chance to watch them because I was covering the baseball. But I did, of course, call the game against UMBC. And I thought, like a lot of people thought, that after the Binghamton game, where they were completely dominant, all the midfield lines were clicking, the scoring was nicely distributed, you scored 22 goals, and your best player only scores 1, which is not a knock on him, but actually a plus for his teammates because they didn't need him to score. So it all looked great. The Binghamton game, clearly their best played game of the year up to that point. Now, as it turns out, that's their best played game of the year. Why? Because UMBC, thanks to a quirk in the COVID schedule, comes back. They get a home-and-home with UMBC, lost in 4 OTs earlier in the season, and you think, okay, it's not going to play like that again. The Seawolves are a different team than they were back in March. They're definitely more intense. Their offense is clicking, their defense is looking good, everything's looking great for them. That they're going to take control of this game, and like they did with Binghamton, because Binghamton plays a similar style to UMBC, where they try to control the tempo of the game and try to steal it from you. Well, UMBC does the exact same thing they did back in March. Made the Seawolves play their style and steal it at the end. This time it only took 1 overtime, but steal it they did. So, all right, UMBC clearly has Stony Brook's number. Not going to happen against Vermont, is it? They're better than Vermont. No.
Yeah.
Turns out the same thing happens. And now you have this buzzer beater, which Zach says was not a legal goal, but it really didn't matter because once UMBC beat NJIT, they locked down the America East regular season title. So Stony Brook and Vermont were playing for the 2-3. 2 and 3, when you're playing on a neutral site anyway, means nothing. Whether you're 2 or whether you're 3. So Vermont winning really had no impact on the tournament, whether you finish 2nd or 3rd. So that's what's going to happen. Stony Brook's got to do it again against Vermont on Thursday. We can't bring it to you because we have the women's lacrosse game going on at the same time. One thing radio cannot do is be in 2 places at once. You're going to have to rely on the stream. But in any case, that's beyond what I'm worried about here. What I'm worried about is that the Seawolves, I think, are in a bit of a funk. And when two teams basically dictate the terms to you in a row, you either have to break out of it somehow and seize control of it, or else, or you're done. And I'm wondering, what will the secret be? I'm thinking about Palinetti, for example. Remember, last week I mentioned I'd like to see Palinetti become more selfish. He's the best one-on-one player they've got. And maybe he has to do what Taron Oldmiller did yesterday. But doesn't necessarily have to be Palinetti. Could it be somebody else? Could it be Chris Bickel? Could it be Tom Hahn? Could it be, any number of guys? Could it be Patrick Kashalk coming off the bench and all of a sudden taking things over? I mean, a whole bunch of guys. They have a whole bunch of options, but they need somebody to break the schneid somehow, because the terms are being dictated to them. They're reacting to what their opponent is doing, and they're playing their style of lacrosse instead of imposing their will on the opponent. And that's what they need to do to win. And I'm hoping they can do that against Vermont, having just learned a lesson.
Yeah, and what about you, Zach?
Yeah, I do understand what Matt is going with all of this. It's just really like, you go on and take down Binghamton, who was pretty close to getting themselves into the America East playoffs until Vermont pretty much ended that whole mission of theirs on Wednesday when they defeated
UMBC did it. UMBC killed their hopes, because at that point, after losing to UMBC, they had to depend on NJIT beating UMBC for them to even have a chance of hosting, and that wasn't going to happen.
But you're talking about Stony Brook. I was just talking about Binghamton trying to get that final bid into the America East playoffs.
Yeah.
But Vermont's win over UAlbany on Wednesday ended their hopes. So you said it right there. I mean, it was very unlikely, because Stony Brook knows how difficult of a team NJIT is with trying to win, because Stony Brook really mopped the floor with them this year. I mean, the second game at NJIT was a little closer, but the Seawolves managed to get themselves away from an upset-minded team in NJIT. But this is a UMBC team that is trying to defend their crown, and were the last team from the America East to bump their way into the NCAA tournament. Of course, they did get smoked in the first round by Penn State, who I believe was the top seed in the tournament by that time. But Stony Brook just seemed like they didn't really have too much time to try and get themselves back from playing what seemed like a pretty much kind of weak team in the America East to much more harder teams to play. It's always hard to make that transition from time to time. And you're going to have to try and work your way back towards like being back at that same type of level of intensity and experience that you want. And now Stony Brook has had that ability to play against UMBC and Vermont and fight down to the wire, where the last goal of the game was pretty much the one that finished it off. Like you could say, it was pretty much the end of the game completely. Stony Brook now needs to understand how to get themselves back into the type of level where they play against competitive teams. And Stony Brook has had their fair share. They played against a Bryant team earlier this season who was looking good. The Seawolves did get the revenge after they lost to them last year. They played against UAlbany, who is also in the America East playoffs, and the Seawolves did well against them, even though they were without Tehoka Nanticoke, who, of course, is not playing the rest of this season. But when you need to get back that experience and understand that feeling playing against competitive teams, I mean, that's what Stony Brook went through in their 3-game losing streak. They lost to Hofstra, they lost to UMBC, and they also lost to Syracuse. And after that 3-game losing streak, they went on, a 5 or 6-game winning streak, because that experience of theirs started to gave them what they needed to be hot at the right time, of course. Then they started to cool down, but from here on out, it's all about getting yourself back up and fired up. That's what you need to reestablish.
They had 2 weeks to do that.
Yeah, it's all about
me. I mean, look, in the semifinal
losing streak, and now they got to go back into the winning streak like they did earlier this season.
Yeah, they learned some things against Vermont and UMBC, and hopefully they will have learned them in time, because Binghamton actually had a pretty good season considering. They split against UMBC. They beat them in overtime and then lost by a goal 3 days apart. Okay, so they lost to Hartford by a goal. That was a bad loss. And, of course, losing to Stony Brook pretty much killed them. But here's the funny thing. They won out. They beat Vermont and beat Lowell to finish out their season. They just had lost too many games to get a shot at the playoffs. Now, Albany will play UMBC. It's the 1-4 bracket. And Albany dropped a goal to Vermont, 16-4, dropped the game, 16-14. Beat NJIT handily, beat UMBC handily by 5 goals on April 11th. So that's something you need to keep in mind. And lost by 5 goals to Syracuse the week before. That was a much tighter game than one that Stony Brook played. And lost by 6 to Stony Brook. Actually lost by more goals to Stony Brook than he lost to Syracuse. Beat up on Binghamton pretty good. Lost to Vermont twice, actually. Both by 2 goals. And beat Hartford good as well. So, that's their history. They get UMBC, and they've beaten them already. And beaten them relatively recently. It could be a Stony Brook Albany final or a Vermont Albany final. I mean, these 4 teams, I think, are fairly evenly matched. And more so than previous years, it's pick 'em as far as these 4 teams, as far as who's going to win it. Now, they've been getting love in the polls. I mean, 4 teams have been ranked. But there is one other thing you can consider, too, and we've mentioned this before. Remember, Ivy League suspended their season, they're out. Their automatic qualifier becomes an at-large bid from somebody. And also, the Ivy League has historically sent more than 1 team. So there could be other at-large bids available. Who's going to get them? Will the America East get them? Will the America East get 1 extra? We don't know yet. So, getting to the final makes it even more important. So, Stony Brook and UMBC in the final, for example, they could both go. That hasn't happened since, I believe, 2007, when UMBC and Albany both went.
Oh, that's nice little history to know there, Matt. And looking ahead to this weekend's America East men's lacrosse tournament, I am not saying that there is any guarantee at all for UMBC to defeat Albany, because I got a funny feeling that for the 2nd season in a row in the men's lacrosse tournament, the top seed hosting could actually fall. Remember, Stony Brook did lose as a top seed 2 seasons ago to UMBC, and UMBC is facing off against UAlbany on Thursday. And earlier this season, the Great Danes hosted the Retrievers, and after UMBC had a good lead, UAlbany stormed back and shocked UMBC 14-9. So with that, I really think that could really cause a legitimate reason why UAlbany can shake things up.
Yeah, UAlbany could. Like I said, these 4 teams are evenly matched. Both these games can go either way. One beef I have, of course, personally, is that the 1-4 will go at 1, and the 2-3 will go at 4. And the 2-3, of course, involves Stony Brook. And when they do face off at 4 o'clock, we'll be well into the women's lacrosse game, which is why we're broadcasting that and can't broadcast this. But I flip the 2 of them and have our men go at 1. We can get both games in from 2 different locations. But, we have no control over that. Those are the breaks. But, of course, if the Seawolves do advance, they will face off at 10 a.m. on Saturday. And one reason why they do that is because ESPN has multiple conference championships on during the day on Saturday. And America East just happens to be the one that goes first at 10 a.m. So if the Seawolves do advance, we will go down to UMBC. I will go down to UMBC and air that game. But unfortunately, we're going to have to sit out the semi. A choice had to be made, and the home game involving the women was the choice.
Yes, and so with that, we do give our very best to Anthony Goulardi and the Stony Brook men's lacrosse team, and wish them all the best in Baltimore, and hope that they move on. So our very own Matt Mankiewich can join them on Saturday morning. So once again,
exactly.
Your Stony Brook men's lacrosse team, the 3 seed in the America East tournament, they will play round 2 against the Vermont Catamounts on Thursday at 4 p.m. You can catch the action online on the America East on AATV. You can follow the AmericaEast.com website for more information. All right, so now that we got men's and women's lacrosse out of the way, we'll focus on other sports that took place today. And we'll start off
as women's softball. How about we go to women's softball? Because, after a really great Wednesday, they played a rain-out makeup doubleheader versus UMass Lowell and played 2 thrilling nail-biters. They got swept this weekend, and it was a really up-and-down week overall. So they played 5 games, obviously the 2 on Wednesday, and then they traveled up. They traveled up to Albany for a 3-game series this weekend. They played a doubleheader on Saturday, and then a getaway game today on Sunday, and they dropped all 3. But let's at least start from Wednesday. So hosting UMass Lowell at University Field, they won game 1 2-1 behind Dawn Bodrug, who is just incredible. She allowed a leadoff home run, and it did snap her scoreless streak at 23 1/3 innings, but she got past it. She only allowed 1 hit over her final 24 hitters faced. She struck out 12 and only allowed the 1 earned run on that home run. Freshman outfielder Juliana Sanzone homered in the 3rd inning to straightaway center field on the first pitch she saw. Now, that was her first career home run, so congratulations to Miss Sanzone. That tied the game at 1 apiece, and then later in that inning, star first baseman Melissa Rarick singled home the tie-breaking run in the 3rd inning that gave them a 2-1 lead. After taking that lead, they would not look back as Bodrug slammed the door on UMass Lowell to secure the 2-1 win. Now, Game 2 was actually even more exciting than Game 1. So, with the score tied at 0 in the 4th inning, UMass Lowell put up a 2-out rally against Melissa Rarick, who moved over to the circle to pitch Game 2. With 2 outs and the bases empty, they scratched across a couple of hits, and they took a 2-0 lead. Now, one of those runs came unearned on a Nicole McCarville error at shortstop with the bases loaded. So now trailing 2-0 in the bottom of the 5th inning, senior center fielder Jordan Herring doubled home Juliana Sanzone with the game's first run to get the Seawolves on the board. Now, in the top of the 7th inning, Nicole McCarville made up for her costly error with some clutch defense. UMass Lowell got the leadoff runner on 3rd with nobody out. But back-to-back hot shots, not back-to-back, but 2 hot shots up the middle. McCarville smothered them with great diving stops, got to her feet, and threw the hitter out of first base. Both of those saved the 1 run on 3rd base, and she kept the score at 2-1 heading to the bottom of the 7th inning, where it was time for the hitting to clutch up. Freshman second baseman Kara McFarland tied the game with an RBI single right through the middle of the diamond, knotting the game up at 2 apiece. With the bases loaded and 2 outs, Lindsay Osmer turned on an inside pitch, ripped it to the wall in left field, and won the game 3-2. So with that, the Seawolves swept the doubleheader 2-0, but of course, as I said, they would not have even close to the same success this weekend at Albany. So Game 1 on Saturday went to extra innings. It was tied at 2-2 going to the bottom of the 8th inning. Dawn Bodrug was pitching well. She had allowed 7 2/3 innings and only 2 earned runs to that point. But a costly error led to the bases being loaded with 2 outs. After that, UAlbany first baseman Miranda Jimenez hit a walk-off grand slam. All 4 of those runs coming on that grand slam were unearned due to the error. That game, the Seawolves committed 4 errors as a team. So UAlbany took Game 1 6-2. Now, with a chance to bounce back, the bats went completely cold. They were shut out in Game 2, 2-0. Albany's Wendy Hammond pitched a complete game shutout. The offense only got 4 hits, and that really spoiled a good outing from Melissa Rarick, who only allowed 2 runs on 6 hits, but she took the tough loss to fall to 8-6 on the year. So Getting swept on Saturday in the doubleheader clinched that they would lose the series, but they had a chance to salvage the series today. However, once again, the bats were really cold. They lost that game 3-1. But it wasn't for a lack of hits. The offense had 9 hits, and they had plenty of scoring opportunities, but they left 10 runners on base. Dawn Bodrug pitched again today, but she only went 3 2/3 innings, allowing 3 earned runs before being pulled from the game. Rarick relieved her and went 2 1/3 scoreless out of the pen. Juliana Sanzone drove in their only run with an RBI single, and with the pair of losses, Bodrug fell to 13-6 on the season, going 0-2 in the series. Now, players who stood out this week was freshman Juliana Sanzone, rather. She went 4 for 12 this week, going with 2 doubles, her first career home run, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. Melissa Rarick also hit safely in all 5 games this week, going 6 for 17 with the go-ahead RBI in Game 1 against UMass Lowell. Also on the mound, she tossed 15 1/3 innings with 2 complete games, only allowing 3 earned runs. And catcher Jordan Nowakowski went 5 for 15 this week, doubling and homering in the process. That home run was her 6th home run of the season, which leads the team 2 more than anyone else. Now, that was obviously a disappointing weekend for the girls softball team, because entering play at 23-9, they leave play at 23-12. It's not exactly looking all that peachy after that, but they still are in first place. They still do have a chance to clinch this upcoming week, and it should be a good week this week to watch the Stony Brook girls softball. Go ahead, Matt.
Guys, here's the trick. The problem we have right now is that they are tied record-wise with UMBC conference. They're both 9-4. UMBC swept this weekend. So, looking at the upcoming schedule, you have an non-conference game against St. John's on Tuesday, and that's at St. John's in Queens. On the flip side, I keep saying that a lot because you have a big problem here. You got 3 games against UMBC this coming weekend at University Field that could decide the regular season championship.
Yeah, I have been keeping a tab on that on what's going to look like next weekend, and because of the tying record and the fact that there are going to be 3 games in this series spanning from Friday to Saturday, both games, of course, will be Friday we are doing, but I won't be able before Saturday. Unlikely to do so because of the possibility of the Women's Lacrosse Championship. The one who takes
no, hold on. Wait a minute. No, it's at 1:00. Yeah, it will conflict.
Yeah,
you can't hide it.
Yeah,
you can't cut it off before it ends.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is that the one in that series who takes 2 of 3 is going to take the top seed in the America East and host the America East softball tournament in 2 weeks. That's how it's going to go out, because even though UAlbany is there, Stony Brook and UMBC still are tied for the best records, and believe it or not, they are the first 2 teams to clinch a playoff berth in the softball tournament. I want to reflect on this once again.
Well, let's establish something here too. The top 6 teams qualify, correct?
No, it's the top 4 teams in both baseball and softball that qualify for the tournament. Stony Brook and UMBC already clinched it.
Previously, it had been 6, actually, in many cases, all teams. But, yeah, top 4 this year. So we established this. There are a lot of things that need to be decided here. First off, because the top 2 teams are going at it, and there are only 3 games, and which means whoever wins 2 will be number 1, as we said. UAlbany and UMass Lowell. UMass Lowell and Maine are on the bubble right now. UMass Lowell is 7-6. Maine is 7-8. Binghamton and Hartford are long out of it. So it's like musical chairs. When the music stops, who's going to still be standing? Let's take a look. Okay, we know what UMBC and Stony Brook are doing this weekend, but this next weekend, I should say. We're still in this weekend. So, as the story goes, Albany will be at Maine for a 3-game set. Lowell will have, let's see their schedule. They will be at Hartford. And then they have a makeup game against Boston University, which is a non-conference game. I don't know why they bother, because the seedings will be established this coming weekend. So they'll be at Hartford. So neither one playing a team really in contention. No, Maine is. Correction. Maine, they, of course, have Albany. So they will go head-to-head. Maine and Albany will go head-to-head. And Lowell, they will be playing Hartford. So they don't have to worry about that at the very least. But they do have to win. Because Albany's at 9-6. The worst record they can possibly have is 9-9. On the other hand, UMass Lowell, they're at 7-6. Now here's something that's strange here. I want to double check UMass Lowell's schedule. Because they have, as I said, Hartford, for the weekend. But I'm not sure what's going on here, because they have 2 remaining games in the America East Conference, but they played 2 fewer games than everybody else. And Maine is at 7-8. So what does Lowell do when it comes down to these 3 teams trying to decide the last 2 spots in the playoffs? Because UMBC and Stony Brook, as we said, are already in. Just to give matters who finishes 1-2. So that's going to be very interesting. We need to look into that. Well, we'll know by this time next week what the final verdict is going to be.
Yeah, of course.
But that's very interesting.
Yeah, and I spoke to Dawn Bodrig a couple of days ago on Wednesday after her dominant outing in Game 1, and she had told me about how they had home field advantage in her freshman year, and she couldn't wait to bring it back again this year, playing in the tournament at home. But right now, of course, that's in jeopardy with this performance by the whole team this past weekend. So really big week coming up.
Do all these games that are conflicting with each other.
I know it's a bad time for all of them to be scheduled at the same time, but it's a really big weekend for the softball team. That's something that people should tune into. I'm definitely excited to cover it on the ground for the SB Statesman. But on a more positive note, let's shift focus now to the baseball team. Now, they did not have a particularly good weekend either. They hosted Binghamton, and while they did win 2 games, they also lost 2 games. They split the 4-game series, losing both 7-inning games and winning both 9-inning games. But however, win or loss, the pitching and the defense was just really not there for the Seawolves. I mean, especially on Saturday, the pitching and defense was just horrible. They allowed 19 runs combined between the 2 games on Saturday alone. Now, Game 1, they were shut out. They lost 10-0. Binghamton's Thomas Babalis, or however you pronounce that name, I'm sorry. He pitched a 7-inning complete game shutout and only surrendered 2 hits. Now, John LaRocca did bounce back. He had a bad NJIT series, but he went 1 for 2 with a triple in that game. And Shan Paradine, who continued to stay red hot, he singled in 3 at-bats. Those were the Seawolves' only 2 hits in Game 1 on Saturday. And Sam Turcotte, who was the ace of the staff, really had his second straight bad start. Only this time he actually could not blame his defense. He allowed 5 earned runs on 9 hits in only 4 innings. So his ERA skyrocketed from 1.88 to 2.54. And Josh O'Neill, out of the bullpen, flashed last week. He pitched pretty well and kept the Seawolves in that game that they lost to NJIT. But he got shelled as well. He allowed another 5 earned runs in 2 1/3 innings. Now, Game 2, the offense broke out. They scored 13 runs on 18 hits. It was one of the most impressive performances they've had all year. However, on the other side of the ball, they committed 4 errors as a team, which led to another 4 earned runs. Now, of course, if you remember, last Saturday, they committed 2 errors that led to a total of 6 unearned runs, and those were the differences in both games that they lost. Now, Jared Milch actually pitched okay. He went 7 innings and only allowed 3 earned runs, but he allowed 7 total runs because 4 of those runs were unearned on the 4 errors. And he did commit one of those errors. So it's not totally his teammates that deserve the blame. Now, as we've seen a couple times this year, the Seawolves let a big lead get away from them. They were winning 10-2 in the 3rd inning and were outscored 7-3 the rest of the way. They only won that game 13-9. Kyle
Right.
Johnson had to come off the bench, and he got them a 9-out save, a 3-inning save for his 4th save of the year. Now, one note I want to give them all credit for because they do deserve this. Everybody
We were
in the
actually
lineup
debating
that day
that.
had a hit. What was
We
that?
were
I'm
actually
sorry,
debating that save because in the save rule, the Seawolves maintained a 4-run lead, but the tying run was on deck. So there was
the tying run
that
was in the
makes
hole.
you that gives you the save. So
Yes, and if you finish the game after entering in a save opportunity, it's a save no matter what the score is. You could end up winning by
but
20, but
wasn't.
if you entered in a 1-run game, it's
But when
still a
he
save.
entered the game, it was not a save opportunity.
Yeah. Well, not
that
by the
developed
score
later.
at least. Not by the score, but there was a runner on base. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
so this has to be mentioned. Okay, in game 2 on Saturday, everybody in the lineup had a hit, and 8 out of the 9 starters had 2 hits or more. They hit 4 home runs, including back-to-back homers by John Tuchillo and Shane Paradine. And congratulations to freshman left fielder Evan Fox, who hit his first career home run and had 3 hits overall in that game. Now we fast forward to today, where they played another doubleheader and they lost game 1 again, 6-2. Brian Herman pitched well, but they lost a 2-0 lead in the 5th inning as he allowed 3 earned runs there. They committed 3 more errors on defense. Okay, it was a tough loss for Herman to suffer. He went 6 1/3, allowed 3 earned runs, and the bats just could not get going in game 3 like how they did in game 2. However, Evan Fox did have 2 hits, a steal, and an RBI himself, so he stayed hot. And then game 4, the getaway game, the Seawolves pulled off a big one. Nick DeGennaro was stellar for them. He went 6 scoreless and struck out 7. Chris Hamilton, the first baseman, they call him Ham, and he had 3 hits, 2 doubles, and drove in 3 runs, while John LaRocca also hit a double for them. Stanton Luthner drove in a run with a pair of hits, but the bullpen was shaky. The bullpen went the final 3 innings for them, but both Mark Alday and Andrew Ledbetter issued 3 walks each. That's 6 walks in 2 innings from those two. Now, let's give some shout-outs to the standout baseball players from this week. John LaRocca really just had a bad series against NJIT, but he really raked this past weekend. He went 6 for 12 with a double, a triple, 2 RBIs, 2 runs, and 2 steals. He was also walked and hit by a pitch. So he was on base 8 out of 14 times. It was a big weekend for the Seawolves center fielder. And then Evan Fox, the freshman, he raked 7 for 12 with a double, 2 RBIs, a steal, and of course his first home run. And also shortstop Stanton Luthner deserves a mention. He went 3 for 10 with 4 RBIs in this series, including his second home run of the year. So after splitting, the baseball team now sits at 22-13 overall, but 18-6 in conference play.
18-7.
18-7 now?
Yeah, I'm looking at the standings on AmericaEast.com. 18-7, 22-14.
Okay,
But,
I guess they didn't update it on Stony Brook's side earlier when I made that.
What happened, they dropped 3 out of 4 to NJIT.
Yes, they were 15-1, and then they dropped 3 out of 4, so that was 16-4, and then they swept. They split rather. They should be 18-6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where's that extra loss come from? Anyway, regardless of that, here's where we stand. They're 5 games ahead of Binghamton in Division B. But
yes.
Binghamton demonstrated that they could take Stony Brook. NJIT,
with the wins,
14,
they
14.
are. Yeah. Sorry,
now,
Matt. Keep going.
The playoff qualification, again, because of this new format or this COVID-related format, they have 2 4-team divisions. Now, the one thing I am still not quite sure what the format's going to be, because it's not on the website. They still have 2019's results on the website. How is this supposed to work as far as the baseball playoffs are concerned? It's going to be a double elimination tournament, but who qualifies? Is the top 2 in each division? What's the story here? Because NJIT is playing for their life. They've won 5 straight, so they might be getting hot at the right time. Looking at NJIT, according to AmericaEast.com, they're 14-14. They're only a couple of games behind Binghamton right now. But they've got Stony Brook, of course, this coming weekend. And then they're home against Binghamton and UMBC the final 2 weekends of the season. So they have some opportunity there. UMBC's 9-18, But Binghamton's right behind them, and Binghamton has an opportunity to make up some ground on Stony Brook as well, particularly if Stony Brook runs into trouble against NJIT again, because they got them at home this weekend, and then they go to UMBC, and then they get Binghamton to finish out the regular season. So,
Yeah.
And Binghamton, as I mentioned on the broadcast yesterday, has historically been a thorn in Stony Brook's side.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
Tim Sinicki is the coach there. He's been at Binghamton almost as long as Matt Sink has been at Stony Brook.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Not with
up
the
by
same success,
couple
though.
of years.
Yeah.
Not with the same
Yeah,
success. No, because he never got to.
Definitely
he never
the
got to
little
Omaha.
brother in that family.
But he's won a few America East championships, and he has knocked Stony Brook out in the process. So Binghamton, they're not afraid of Stony Brook. They have no reason to be.
No, they do not. That Bearcat Seawolves rivalry really is strong. And I do just want to clarify, I just double checked. They are 18-6 in conference play. So
Okay.
I guess America East has a little
They might be
typo
wrong.
issue going on. But
in any
yeah.
case, in that division, the only team that's pretty much out of it is UMBC.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
the game
And Stony Brook
cares,
did most
who's
of
gonna
that
be
damage
sitting
to
when the
them.
music stops. And
Right.
Stony Brook is no longer in. Well, they have a nice lead on Binghamton, but there's still enough games left where things could get very interesting. And also, top seed hosts. Right now, they're top overall
Yes.
because they're way ahead of anybody in Division A. And Hartford's 14-12, Albany's 13-13. Again, according to AmericaEast.com. Maine 10-11, and UMass Lowell 11-15, and that is yet to be decided too. But what I want to do is, while you guys are talking, is look up the playoff format for America East 2021 baseball. Because
Well, Zach,
again,
you said earlier that it's the top 4, right, for both baseball and
that's
softball.
Yes, but I don't know
I said-
anything beyond that.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry, my bad. But
I mean, I'm trying to formulate the idea of how they would work it out when it comes, because remember, it's 4 teams, and it's going to be going over a span of 3 days for the softball, I know. And the baseball, I'm wondering if it's also 3 days as well, or if that's actually 4 days, because that would mean that each team would play 1 game per day, or something like that. That would make the move on to probably a winner's bracket or a loser's bracket that the America East has done before in the playoffs.
yeah, well, I do, just playoff picture aside, I do want to point out the fact that you had to see this coming from Stony Brook's baseball team. I mean, not everybody goes on a 15-1 stretch, so you had to see the descend back to earth coming. They are 3-5 over the last 2 weeks, but hopefully they will be okay as long as they continue to get clutch hits, which they mostly have, and as long as the bottom of the order continues to produce, right? Because last week we had a game in which the top 4 hitters all got multiple hits, and then the bottom 5 hitters went 0 for 14 combined. So if they keep getting that production from Evan Fox and Stanton Luthner, and even Cole Durkin was pretty productive this weekend. If they continue to get production like that, they'll be fine. You can forget this dropping 3 of 4 to NJIT and splitting versus Binghamton. You can forget this 3-5 stretch, because this team is still very good. They've got a lot of bullpen questions for sure, and those questions only got bigger. They really were not answered this past weekend. But yeah, you definitely did have to see this coming back to earth a couple of weeks ago. It's hard to maintain a 15-1 record.
Yeah, I know how tough it can be, but especially when you start with fire, but then it starts to cool down. But I'm not completely worried yet, because Stony Brook still has a good distance from the next best team in the America East, and there are three opponents left for Stony Brook to face. And I got a funny feeling that if next weekend, if Stony Brook in baseball sweeps NJIT in a 4-game, that could be what they need to clinch the playoffs. It's not going to be guaranteed that they'll get the top seed. It's just a playoff.
They just dropped 3 out of 4 to them. That's
but
not
they
a
weren't
guarantee.
even. But the problem is they weren't even recognized as the actual home team in either one of those 4 games last weekend because NGIT was recognized at that. But Stony Brook has to learn what they did, what happened last weekend that only allowed them to win 1 of the 4 games played. And with true home field advantage this time, I think they'll do better.
Yeah, well, it's actually an interesting point to make. They're 12-9 at home and 10-4 on the road, so they're a better team away from home than they are at home. And also, yes, they're 10-4 away, but really they're 10-2 away because, as Zach just said, 2 of those road games were actually played on their home field. So they are definitely a better road team. So that's something that could definitely be interesting to watch down the line. But with all that being said, it was another really big story in Stony Brook sports this week, and it came from an off-season sport right now, women's basketball. Ashley Langford was named the new head coach of the women's team. Coming off of their first tournament appearance ever, they now have a new head coach.
Yeah, this announcement was actually made during the middle of the softball doubleheader on Wednesday. I found that out and immediately announced it during one of the breaks on the radio. And believe it or not, during one of the broadcasts for Sam Niederman when he was doing the softball game on America East TV while the game was happening, he took a few seconds to alert the audience that Stony Brook women's basketball had made that ultimate decision to hire Ashley Langford as well.
Yeah, and Langford comes from a successful program. She was an associate head coach at JMU for 4 seasons, and they went 91-31 in her time there. And as a player, she's Tulane's all-time assist leader with 722. So she was a very good player in her heyday, and I'm eager to see what she can pass on to a very good Stony Brook women's team. Now, with all that being said, there was some other interesting Stony Brook news. So, of course, everybody knows that the NFL draft was this past weekend, and 2 former Stony Brook Seawolves football players are now in the NFL. Oh, 3, that's right. Yes, a third one was signed recently. 3 undrafted free agents who are now Stony Brook alumni signed with NFL teams. Sam Camaro went to the Chicago Bears. TJ Morrison signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. And Augie Contressa signed with the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So congratulations to those 3. It's a really big day that, not a lot of people can say that they've gone through. So that's really big. If you remember a couple of years ago in 2015, Stony Brook had a tight end named Will Tye who went undrafted and actually had a pretty good rookie season for the New York Giants, the hometown New York Giants. Also played a couple of games for the New York Jets in 2017. We haven't seen him since. But he was the last Stony Brook Seawolf football player to make an NFL debut. So let's see what these guys have up their sleeves.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the top of the hour, and we pretty much covered all the sports that we cover regularly. What are the stories are we going to be following here? Because I'm just trying to see. Oh, here we go. In track and field, senior Van Moffitt has been rewriting record books since he arrived on Stony Brook's campus. He broke a 23-year-old record today in the 5,000 meters in the final day of the American East Championships. Won the event in 14 minutes, 8.04 seconds. And the former record was set by Carl Rasmussen of BU back when they were in the American East, a long time ago. Ran in 14:19.06. He had multiple wins, and he helped Stony Brook's men finish in the top 3 of the league at the Outdoor Championships, while the women finished 1 spot behind on their side in 4th. So we got track and field in as well. We got everything pretty much covered, haven't we?
Yeah, we're a little ahead of schedule tonight, so I guess, do you guys want to move into professional sports? We got a lot to talk about with professional sports. It's been an active week in New York, so you guys want to go in that direction? One thing I do want to sum up what's coming up this week, which is very important. Thursday,
America East semifinals in men's and women's lacrosse. The men will be playing against Vermont at UMBC at 4 p.m. We, on the other hand, will be bringing you Stony Brook Seawolves women's lacrosse, their semifinal against UMBC at Laval Stadium, 3:30 draw control, and of course we go on the air at 3:15. Saturday gets very interesting. Should the Seawolves men advance, we will bring that game to you at 9:45 a.m., depending on, of course, who wins the other semifinal. That game will also be at UMBC. Now, if the Seawolves women advance, which, let's be honest, seems likely, they will be playing at 1 o'clock p.m., 12:45 on WUSB. If by some fluke of nature the women fail to advance, we will bring you the baseball doubleheader scheduled for that day, 11:45 a.m. I believe we were playing NJIT. So, but the most likely scenario is that we're definitely going to get the women's game. We'll probably get the men's game on Saturday, and we'll have to take a pass on both the softball and the baseball because of the conflicts. Regular season versus playoffs. Playoffs always win. Sunday, we do have the second doubleheader for baseball. Although, I have to admit, given the situation for the softball team, I have to wonder if a decision needs to be made here, because games will be going on at both fields, which means foul balls from one could wind up in the middle of the other. But with more on the line with the women than with the men, do we go with the game that is more important, or the series that's more important? Now, of course, I believe they play 2 and then 1, so the softball team can clinch, and the top seed, they're done. But if they split, and Sunday's the deciding game, got to think about it.
That would be just exciting. I don't even know what other word to describe it with, but that would be amazing to get to see Dawn Bodrig pitching on Sunday for what would be first place in the America Eastern Conference, with first place on the line. Do or die. That's a big deal, and that's something that I think a pitcher like Dawn Bodrig is actually. I think that she's actually prepared. I think she's prepared her whole life for something like that. And with the season she's having, despite the down weekend she had, I think that you got to like your chances if you are Stony Brook.
Well, the chances. I'm even talking about on-air production meeting here, because what I'm thinking is that we may have to change our minds. Of course, we have the flexibility to do this because, of course, we are WUSB and both events are taking place right here. Okay. So, correction. I have to make a correction. Okay. Softball is Friday and Saturday. And baseball is Saturday and Sunday. And Saturday, we've already committed to lacrosse. So, Friday, we got to start thinking, though. Because
you better hope that they sweep Friday, then.
That's a crucial series. That's a crucial doubleheader. Zach, we got to think about that.
And of course, you can expect Dawn Boats. 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 You can expect.
Second, guys, I'm actually witnessing a crazy bottom of the ninth between the Mets and the Phillies.
Yeah,
it's 8-7.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, got it here. Runner on second. Tying run is on second base.
And the Phillies are down to their final strike, with Bryce Harper being the last hope for the Phillies. Because when this Mets game ends, I think we just need to tell everybody who did not pay attention to what just happened a few moments ago at Citizens Bank Park to recap what went on in the bottom of that ninth.
Yeah, well, the Mets entered this inning winning 8-4, but Edwin Diaz.
Let me just make sure that something is certain about this. And now Javis Familia is in, and it's foul ball. Count right now on Harper is 0-2. So, yeah, what happened is that the Mets were up 8-4. Edwin Diaz pitching, as Mike said.
Yeah.
Runners on first and third. It actually was 8-5.
No, it was 8-4 at the beginning of the inning. You see, there's this bad omen in baseball. Whenever you bring in your closer in a non-save situation, he still somehow manages to find a way to blow it. And Edwin Diaz just about did. He allowed an opposite field game-tying 3-run homer to Rhys Hoskins, only for that call to be overturned. It turned out that the ball hit the top of the railing, and it stayed in play. So it was overturned from a 3-run homer to a 2-run double. Now, Bryce Harper is batting with the game-tying run in scoring position down to their final strike with Jairus Familia on for the save opportunity, something that Familia has done quite a bit in his past for the Mets, but hasn't done regularly since 2018. Now, I think that we owe our listeners a little bit of something else, because I don't think we're not the TV provider. We're not ESPN. We're not the ones broadcasting Mets Phillies to them. But if you want to see something exciting, go flip on ESPN right now. I'm
watching it. So can you.
Oof.
The count is 2-2 now.
Yeah, it looks like Familia might have just gotten squeezed. But anyway.
Yeah.
So around the sporting world in the state of New York, I want to talk about the NFL draft to start off the top of the hour. It is 11:02 p.m. right now. We had the first round. Yes, we had the first round of the NFL draft on Thursday night. All 32 teams. Well, not all 32 teams made their selection, but we had 32 players drafted. 32 young men became future NFL stars. And I want to talk about the main hits and misses. So, Number one overall, obviously, was Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback from Clemson. He went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it almost seems as though he is a write-in for his success, for stardom. Everybody loves him. He's going to go down there and help change the culture with Urban Meyer. But number two was also, a big-time pick. Zach Wilson had been the shoe-in number two pick for most of the offseason, as Jairus Familia just struck out Bryce Harper to save the Mets bacon and take 2 of 3 from the Phillies. That's a big win for the Mets. The Mets have been bailed out by some officiating the past couple nights now. Having said that, back on topic, Zach Wilson was drafted number 2 overall by the New York Jets. He becomes their next starting quarterback in a long line of starting quarterbacks. Of course, recently they just moved on from Sam Darnold, the number 3 overall pick in 2018. Zach Wilson hoping for better fortunes. And the Jets are doing a better job already building around Wilson than they did around Sam Darnold. Remember, they had 2 first-round picks this year from the Jamal Adams trade. And with the second first-round pick that they had, they traded up and drafted guard Elijah Vera Tucker, who was so versatile that he was an All-American as a left tackle a couple of years ago. Now, he was also the highest graded offensive guard in this draft, and the Jets got him. So in the second round, with the second pick of the second round, 34th overall, they drafted Elijah Moore, a short, speedy, sure-handed wide receiver out of Ole Miss. Now, speaking of Ole Miss wide receivers, the New York Giants on that same night were picking number 11 overall, only to trade down with the Chicago Bears from number 11 to 20. With that number 11 overall pick, the Bears selected quarterback Justin Fields out of Ohio State. And with the number 20 overall pick, the New York Giants selected wide receiver Kadarius Toney, another wide receiver from Ole Miss. He's very versatile. He's very athletic. However, that pick really struck all of us by surprise on WUSB. We were live streaming the event on YouTube on Thursday, and we were in awe of the pick. Kwity Paye, the best edge rusher in the draft, was available to the Giants at that time, and yet Gettleman passed on him for a wide receiver. So, I mean, Gettleman does get paid the big bucks, but Gettleman's also known for his reaches. Andrew Thomas last year, Daniel Jones the year before that, trading back into the first round for DeAndre Baker, who's not even on the roster anymore. He hasn't had a good record in terms of drafting, and Kadarius Toney hopefully will break that streak, that unlucky streak that Dave Gettleman has. And it should be noted, that was the first time in Dave Gettleman's career that he ever traded back. And by trading down, he got the Giants a second first-round pick for 2021. So now both New York teams have 2 first-round picks in the 2022 NFL draft, I should say, because 2021 was this past week. The one notable selection was reigning Heisman Trophy Award winner Devontae Smith. He was a wide receiver out of Alabama. The Philadelphia Eagles traded up from 12 to 10 to draft him, swapping picks with the division rival Dallas Cowboys. The Green Bay Packers made some waves, but it wasn't quite the Packers themselves. It was their future Hall of Fame quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, who all of a sudden, midday Thursday, a report came out from Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport saying that Aaron Rodgers is unhappy with the Green Bay Packers and he does not want to return to the Packers. Now that is huge, huge news. The Denver Broncos tried materializing a trade for Aaron Rodgers. That did not go through. But it really overshadowed a lot of the draft picks that were made. Notably, wide receiver Joe Horn, former NFL wide receiver Joe Horn, was upset with the NFL media's coverage of the drafting of his son, JC, who went number 8 overall to the Carolina Panthers. He feels as though his son's shining moment was overshadowed by Aaron Rodgers' potential retirement or potential requested trade. We still don't know yet what Aaron Rodgers is going to do and how the Green Bay Packers plan to appease him. But,
how exactly were they supposed to approach that? There's anybody you want to blame, it's Aaron Rodgers. Bad timing. The fact of the matter is, if an MVP quality quarterback is available, that's a story. And if said MVP quality quarterback is available on draft day, that's an even bigger story.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a close to home story.
It's going to overshadow whatever else is going on. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I felt really no sympathy for that. I mean, I was happy for J.C. Horn anyway. I think that the Carolina Panthers actually may have drafted the best cornerback in the draft. A lot of guys had him as the 3rd best corner in the draft. I thought he was the best corner in the draft, and I thought that the Panthers really made a good selection there at number 8 overall. But either way, what's more important? Aaron Rodgers, the reigning NFL MVP, the 3-time MVP, a Super Bowl MVP, him saying, I don't want to be a Green Bay Packer, or J.C. Horn going to the Carolina Panthers? I don't know. I would have to think that
Aaron Rodgers
is a little more relevant.
Much bigger by far.
Yeah.
Because Aaron Rodgers has the potential to do to his next team what Tom Brady did to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yes.
And I agree on that, too.
Go ahead, Zach. Were you going to say anything else?
Yeah, I'm just agreeing with what you're all saying, because who knows? He could do that. He could end up completely hosting Jeopardy for good or something like that. That could also be another option.
Yeah,
you know what?
Yeah, it's a weird thing. A couple of weeks, months, years ago, would you have ever predicted that the Green Bay Packers' fate is in the hands of Jeopardy? If Jeopardy gives Aaron Rodgers the full-time gig, he might just retire. He's happy over there.
His status is in jeopardy.
He already has Hall of Fame written all over him.
There's a pun there. Yeah. But listen to me. One thing, Rodgers already said, and it is true, they could record the entire season of Jeopardy in the offseason. So he could theoretically be the host of Jeopardy and play another season in the NFL without too much conflicting. It seems like they tape a new episode every day. They don't. They run these things off in blocks, which is one of the reasons why Trebek was literally able to do it almost to the day he died. He was able to run off a few and then rest. So, from that point of view, he's setting up his next career. Now, are you thinking about? Hey, look what Michael Strahan was able to do. Mm-hmm. Or look at a guy like Joe Garagiola from another generation. Joe Garagiola was a Major League Baseball player who became a broadcaster, but not just a broadcaster. Also, on the host on the Today Show, game show host. He did everything. Commercial pitchman, everything.
Yeah, and keep going, Matt. Go ahead. Were you going to say?
Garagiola, while this was going on, he'd drive you crazy. There is, I believe it's first of all, there are several All-Star games on YouTube in their entirety. And NBC was the rights holder. That theme music we play on breaks during baseball games is from NBC's Game of the Week in the 1980s. So,
interesting little factoid there.
NBC was the rights holder. So what happened was Joe Garagiola used to do a pregame for Game of the Week called the Baseball World of Joe Garagiola, which is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing. He's on the broadcast with Vince Scully, and he's doing commercials for Chrysler in the same broadcast. So you couldn't get rid of them. You can't turn them off.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to bring this up, too, because this is an interesting thing that happens in the NFL, especially with the draft process. A lot of times, and it's usually with quarterbacks, they'll bring up, they want to make sure that quarterbacks do not have any interests outside of football. There was this fear, and it's weird. They get penalized because they're smart, but there was this fear with Andrew Luck, Stanford graduate. He was a smart man. There was a fear that he might want to venture outside of football. And look at that. He retired very, very early, coming off of a great year. Granted, a lot of that had to do with injuries and his body just wasn't recovering the same anymore. But somebody who has, other interests will be a lot quicker to pull the trigger on retirement than someone who lives and dies by football. And in Aaron Rodgers' case, he just got engaged this past year. As we know, he is the host of Jeopardy, as of now. And that's two different interests right there. That the Packers now have to compete with, and the Packers are competing with it poorly. They've been for the past couple of years. Remember, they could never get Aaron Rodgers a defense ever. They blew that 2014 NFC Championship game. They were blown away by the Falcons at that 2016 NFC Championship game. They had the opportunity to go and get him some better players in the draft last year, and instead they drafted his replacement, who a lot of scouts don't even believe will be a good player. His name is already coming up in trade rumors. I'm talking about Jordan Love. There was a trade rumor with him going to the Patriots. And how do you think Aaron Rodgers feels about that? He's pissed. And it's just another thing, one more thing after another. So in a way, can you blame him? Because yes, they won a Super Bowl with him, but you can make the argument they should have 3 or 4 Super Bowls with him. In a way, despite winning that Super Bowl, they've wasted his prime because he is, before Mahomes, he is and was, and in my opinion still is, the best quarterback ever. Not the greatest. That's obviously Brady. We don't ever have to have that discussion. But the most talented quarterback ever is probably Aaron Rodgers. And they were only able to get 1 ring out of it. They only got 1 ring out of the NFL's all-time passing leader when he retired. That was Brett Favre. And they've only been able to get 1 ring out of a 3-time MVP and the best talent ever in Aaron Rodgers. So,
okay. Turn back the clock.
Big deal.
Turn back the clock. 56 years. 1965. Jim Brown. Okay. At the time, the greatest running back ever. Owned all the records. Lifetime, season, you name it. The greatest rusher in the history of professional football up to that point.
He was a great lacrosse player, too.
Yeah, great lacrosse player. Syracuse alum. Well, remember then, back in those days, even star players in any sport made relatively modest salaries. Okay, only the absolute best broke $100K. And definitely not football players. So, all of a sudden, Jim Brown gets a little bored and signs on to do a movie as an actor. The movie is called The Dirty Dozen, on demand everywhere, and it was a bit of a blockbuster. It was a war movie. It had Lee Marvin in it, and John Cassavetes, and a bunch of interesting, Telly Savalas, a bunch of interesting characters. Gotta watch it. Okay. So anyway, what happens is he's on the set for this movie, and Art Modell is saying, just like you were just saying a minute ago with Andrew Luck, I don't want my football players doing movies. I'm concentrate on football. And not only that, there were some delays in filming, and at some point, it was going to conflict with training camp. It gained into July. And Brown was about to enter the final year of a 2-year deal that paid him a little over $60,000 a year. Chump change by today's standards. Fairly decent money by 1965 standards. But no more than a vice president in a small company would make. I mean, my father was only making $15K at the time. That was considered good money. So, if he wanted to play the next season and collect his money, he'd have to ditch the film, according to Art Modell. Or else. Okay? He says, no veteran Browns player has been granted or will be given permission to report late to training camp. And that includes Jim Brown. And he will be fined for every day he misses, and it all works. You know what Brown says? Go to hell. I'm done. I quit. Now, Brown was one of those guys, he could have played another 10 years. He was
one
in perfect shape, never got hurt.
Right.
A great athlete. He could have kept on going well into the 1970s.
Yeah.
But,
and back then, he was the size of linebackers back then, too. So, I mean,
that's also
he was
true.
just going to deliver more pain. He wasn't going to take any pain.
But he basically told Art Modell, go to hell. And that was it. Done. But you want to know something else? He appeared in 44 movies.
Yeah, but some of them sucked.
He has a career. A lot of them sucked.
Wasn't there was like an alien invasion movie or something like that I remember.
Oh, he was in some blaxploitation movies and stuff like that. But he had a career. He had a second career.
Yeah.
And of course,
all right. Well, on that note,
but the point is that if an NFL also means not for long.
Yeah.
So these guys have to think of life beyond the NFL because their careers don't last.
Right. And it's also the no fun league.
The NFL is a kicker.
Yeah.
Or Tom Brady.
It's the no fun league. They want to leave after a little while. They get other interests. They get bored. But on that note, Matt, I want to throw it back to you. Okay, let's venture on into the NHL. Okay, so the Islanders won a couple games this week. The Rangers they actually lost to the Islanders. So what do you have to say about that? The Islanders did happen to clinch a playoff berth yesterday. That's a big deal. Go for it, Matt.
Huge deal. Okay, that is, of course, one step to the ultimate goal, and the Islanders are in. Just taking a look at the standings right now, because in the Central, Carolina, Tampa Bay, and Florida are in. In the West, Vegas, Colorado, and Minnesota are in. In the North, which is all Canadian teams, Toronto is in, but just Toronto. Pittsburgh, Washington, the Islanders are in. The last spot will probably be taken by Boston because the Rangers are too far behind. They're 8 points back. So now it's just what's left is the seeding. They got great goaltending. Defensively, they are what they are. Now, the big question I have to actually consult, when will Anders Lee be back? Because, as I've been saying, those two aspects of the game are solid, defense and goal talent, attending. But scoring is where they're weak. And if they run to a Tampa Bay, Anders Lee will not make the playoffs. Okay, that is the latest. That was as of like 3 weeks ago, almost a month ago. So knee injury, he's done. The big question is, can they score enough goals? And that's going to be their Achilles heel. Will they lose 2-1 games? Will they lose 1-0 games? Because like we said, the goaltending has been stupendous. So, Pittsburgh, on the other hand, got red hot, vaulted to the top of the Eastern Division. Still only 4 points ahead of the Islanders. The Islanders do have an opportunity to overtake them. The big question is it worth it? But they have, of course, clinched their third straight trip to the Stanley Cup playoffs. And since Barry Trotz took over, they have not failed to do so. But here's another thing that'll make you laugh. It's the first time since 2002, 2003, and 2004 that they did this, that they accomplished this feat. That's amazing. And prior to that, they went 7 years without getting into the playoffs. So, the Islanders
that comes
are
at you
due.
fast, I guess.
Yeah.
Things can change in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, but the big question is going to be, how deep can they go with the offense they have? And one of my favorite examples of how much respect Islanders scoring gets, I have friends, my former NHL.com colleagues, who have made their assessments of players from a fantasy point of view, and the Islanders get no love. The best lines in the NHL,
that way.
none of them. The Rangers get more love than the Islanders do.
Yeah, which
Now,
is
the
disrespectful. But
Yeah.
at the same time, last year the Islanders were in the bottom 10 in scoring offensively, so it's
Right.
it's more or less the same.
But the Rangers, on the other hand, Ranger fans, as Joe Sikoa has been saying over the past few weeks, he's upset that they're probably not going to make the playoffs, but there's a tremendous upside because they can score. And if they get the rest of their game refined to a certain point, that they may be a threat, maybe as early as next year. But they're starting to gel, got hot a little bit too late, and weren't able to really sustain it. So, they'll lick their wounds, get ready for next year. But next year's going to come sooner than you think, because we're not going to be done with this playoff season until July. So, Ranger fans can be happy. Devil fans, you're still further away off than the Rangers are, but the Rangers are on the cusp. They have an opportunity to do some damage next year. But that's where we stand right now.
Yeah, and as you quoted Joe earlier, the Rangers have a very low percentage chance to make the playoffs. How low? Less than 1% chance of making the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. So
it would take a miracle.
Looks like it's not going to happen.
A lot of other people losing. And it would take Boston just tanking. The Rangers have to win out, and the Boston would have to tank.
Right.
Yeah, that's the only way at this point. And the fact is, the Islanders do play at Boston to end the regular season, so Rangers will hope for that.
If it ever gets down to that. But like I said, one would have to go on a long losing streak, and another one would have to go on a long winning streak, and it doesn't seem likely. So, right now, if you're the Islanders, keep playing. But in the NHL, playing for position is not something you want to waste too much time on. Getting a better seed, okay, fine. But you're not going to waste too much effort. Once you're in, you're not going to play for the top spot. The President's Trophy is considered a booby prize. It is a dubious honor. You have the best record in the NHL, and you're 2 rounds and out in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Why? Because you wasted too much effort getting that best record in the NHL. You get home ice all the way through the final, but that's all. That's the only advantage you get. And if you're close to it, and you're game a couple of points away from it, okay, fine. But if you take a look, the President's Trophy, they started issuing it in the mid-'80s. and maybe now I'm going to look it up because I had this in front of me before. But just to give you an idea of what the President's Trophy means in terms of your performance in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Okay, here we go. President's Trophy on Wikipedia. Here's the list. Here's what happens. Now I'm going to count. 1985-86 was the first President's Trophy, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In 35 odd years, 8 teams have won the cup. And none
not promising.
Since 2013.
Right.
And the one before that,
that's a good way to put it.
And the one before that, 02. So in the past 20 years, 4 teams have won. 4 President's Trophy winners have won the cup. So once you're in, position doesn't mean anywhere near as much. Yeah, you like to control who you face in the playoffs, but it doesn't matter that much because if you're good, you get beat them anyway. But complete waste of effort. The Bruins last year lost in the second round. The Tampa Bay Lightning in 2019 lost in the first round. The Predators lost in the second round in 2018. The Capitals second round. They did 2 years in a row, 16 and 17. 2015, the Rangers lost the conference final to Tampa Bay. The Bruins lost in the second round in 2014. And in 2013, the Blackhawks won the cup. There you go. I rest my case.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely a good point. There's really no better evidence to point to than that.
2 rounds and out.
What were you going to say, Zach?
What?
What were you going to say, Zach?
No, I mean, I totally agree with that as well.
Okay. Well, then, with that, why don't we shift to the MLB? It was a much more exciting week this week in New York baseball. So the New York Yankees, who we were talking about 2 weeks ago, they were actually technically the worst team in baseball by record at 5-10. They got back to 500 earlier today. So they split a 4-game series with the division rival Baltimore Orioles, and they swept the Detroit Tigers in 3 games. It should be noted that the Tigers are now the worst team in baseball. They are 8-20 after losing today's game to the Yankees. But having said that, the Yankees are now back at 0. They are 14-14 overall. And Matt, what has been the biggest fundamental difference for the Yankees in this turnaround?
Playing the Orioles and the Tigers.
So you're not buying it, is what you're saying. You're not buying the Yankees' hot streak?
I am buying the fact that both teams have crappy pitching, and the Yankees teed off on it. Now, to their credit, they were facing bad pitching before and not teeing off. But they still strike out too much. They still rely too much on the home run. And I don't know how much of an adjustment you can make with the season well underway. But you go up against good pitching, but on the flip side, good pitching beats good hitting, and they're getting good pitching that they were not getting the first couple of times through the rotation.
Yeah, Tyone and Kluber, definitely. And speaking of Kluber, Corey Kluber went 8 scoreless innings today, and he struck out 10, only allowed 2 hits, and he struck out 7 through the first 3 innings.
Thank you.
Jameson Tyone earned his first win as a Yankee on Saturday, and he only allowed 1 earned run in 5 innings. Now, another key to their success has been Giancarlo Stanton. He's raging hot. He went 3 for 5 in 3 straight games. He's currently riding a 9-game hitting streak, and he's 17 for 39 in that streak. He's doubled twice, and he's homered 3 times. He's brought his average all the way up to 271, so he's definitely hit his stride. And Aaron Judge has gotten hot, too. He had a really big week this week, going 8 for 20 with 2 doubles, 3 homers, and 10 RBIs. And that's a big deal for Aaron Judge because, one thing Aaron Judge really hasn't done at a high level in his career is hit with runners in scoring position. He was hitting a little over 250 in his career coming into the season with runners in scoring position. He's done a much better job of that this year, really in his whole career, he never really drove in runs without hitting the ball over the wall. We saw that this week. He had runners on base and he cashed them in.
Well,
He didn't
again,
just have to hit the solo home run to get them on the board. So
here's the thing.
it was a big week for the Yankees corner outfielder. Go ahead,
It's great
Matt.
when he gets into one and unleashes it at 115 miles an hour and it rockets over the fence. Wonderful.
Yeah. Second
The
in the
fact of the
majors
matter
in
is,
velocity.
this is the one guy I would like to see him emulate is Hideki Matsui. Hideki Matsui, take a look at Baseball Reference because they have both his Japan record and his U.S. record. Now, in Japan, they play 130-game seasons. Now, in Japan, Matsui was a similar type of hitter to Judge. Godzilla. Hit 50 home runs in 130 games. But his strikeout totals were relatively high. 100 strikeouts in 130 games. Comes to the U.S., doesn't hit as many home runs. His RBIs are high, but his strikeouts go down because he changed his approach and changed his role. He goes from rock star in Japan for their most prestigious team. The Yomiuri Giants are their Yankees. They won 8 straight championships in one stretch back in the 60s. So, and they are hated by everybody outside of Tokyo for that reason. You know, one very popular cheer in Japanese is "Go to Hell Giants."
Yeah.
So, hey, just like I'm actually cursing Italian here. You know, Juve, go bleep yourself. And that is a standard cheer in Italian Serie A soccer in the top in their top league and the Championships League. You know, Juventus is universally hated. Real Madrid hated outside Madrid. Barcelona hated outside Barcelona. Everybody hates Man U. Everybody run down the list of all these power teams. Same thing happens in the States. That's how I always explain. And then it's Mets and Yankees, Man U and Man City. Man City's hot right now. Man U is the traditional winner. But anyway.
Well, Mets aren't that hot, but I think we should acknowledge. I don't think the Yankees are the Yankees have haters in all 50 states, but the Yankees are also the only MLB team that has fans in all 50 states.
This is also true. Hey, traveling to Europe, I see people walking around with Yankee hats.
Yeah, because
non-Americans.
They're a global brand. They're not just a national brand or just a statewide brand. I mean, when I was little. Yeah, when I was little, there was a movie. I think it was like a Transformers movie, and the characters were in Egypt, and they told some security guards that they're from America, they're from New York, and then the security guard in his Egyptian accent went, "Go Yankees!" Like they're known everywhere. So I wouldn't say they're hated everywhere, but they are definitely not. I would say that the Yankees are America's team. I wouldn't say that the Dallas Cowboys are America's team. I think the Cowboys are more hated than the Yankees are.
Oh, my God. Yeah, especially by Giant fans, by Washington football team fans, and
Eagles.
Just everybody else.
Yeah, but even
division rivals, definitely.
Right, but even Packers and 49ers fans, even they hate the Cowboys, and they don't even see them all the time. So that just shows you how hated the Cowboys are. I don't think the Yankees
Going back to Matsui.
Matsui
shortened his swing and became more of an RBI guy because he felt that in that lineup, that's where he could have helped the team most. He didn't have to be the big home run hitter. And that's where I think Aaron Judge will get the longevity in his career. Okay? He doesn't have to be Mickey Mantle. He could be Hideki Matsui and be just as revered as a Yankee and probably get the Yankees more success in the end.
Well, I think asking Aaron Judge to make a fundamental change like that is a really big one. And plus, you can't teach an old dog.
I think he's trying to do it. I really think. I mean, take a look at his approach.
He might be trying to
what he's been trying to do.
Yeah, he's probably trying to hit more line drives. That's probably it. But I don't think I don't think he's completely taking the uppercut away. You know, to ask him at his age now, he's been playing baseball forever. He's been having success at the highest level forever. I don't think you can ask him to make a big time fundamental change like the one that Matsui made coming over from Japan to the USA. Now, let's stay in state, but talk about the other New York team. The New York Mets also got themselves back to 500 today. They took 2 of 3 from the division rival Philadelphia Phillies, and they improved to 6-3 on the year against the Phillies. They won a nail-biter tonight. They are now 11-11 on the year, a sparkling 11-11, and that is actually good enough for first place in the National League East. It was picked by many of the pundits, to be probably the most competitive division in baseball, and right now they don't have a single winning team in that division. Of course, it is early, but they had a bit of a rough start to this week. They had lost 3 in a row. They were swept by the first place Boston Red Sox, division rival of the New York Yankees. They only scored 1 run in the 2 games that they played against them, losing 2-1 and 1-0. Then, of course, they traveled to Philadelphia to take them on for a 3-game series. They lost game 1, 2-1, and both of those runs were unearned. Both of those runs scored on a passed ball. 1 passed ball, 2 runs. That was the difference in the game. They bounced back, though. They won 5-4 last night. Michael Conforto hit the go-ahead home run in the top of the 9th inning. And then tonight, they barely held on. We were talking about it earlier because we were watching it at the top of the hour. They were winning 8-4 in the bottom of the 9th inning, and Edwin Diaz came in to shut the door. Now, it wasn't a save opportunity, and seemingly every time a closer enters the game in a non-save opportunity, he blows the game. Well, he blew the game. He allowed a 2-out, 3-run homer to Rhys Hoskins to knot the game up at 8-8. However, they went to replay and determined that the ball did not actually clear the fence, so a 3-run homer was reversed to a 2-run double. Edwin Diaz was pulled from the game, and J. Aris Familia was entered to get the 1-out save. He faced Bryce Harper. Bryce gave it everything he could, but Familia struck out on the 32 pitch, and the Mets really got away with one. They won it 8-7 after rallying for 6 runs in the top of the 8th inning to come back from down 4-2. They were leading 2-1 when former Yankees shortstop Didi Gregorius blasted a 3-run homer to give the Phillies the lead. So it was a back-and-forth, high-scoring, exciting game that went all the way down to the wire. Now, I mentioned Michael Conforto earlier, and I mentioned Michael Conforto last week too. He's raging hot. Over his last 14 games, he's got 6 multi-hit games. He's 16 for 49 with 5 doubles, 2 home runs. He homered on Saturday night to win the game, as I said. And completely opposite of him is Francisco Lindor, who is just ice cold. Like freezer burn cold, back of the freezer. He's constantly rolling over. He's constantly popping up. And he's constantly getting chances. He has had a lot of opportunities to come through for the Mets big time, including tonight. Right before that Didi 3-run homer, he had the bases loaded and 2 outs, and he popped up. He popped up weakly on a good pitch to hit. He went 0 for 5 tonight. He's batting. He's not just on the interstate. He's in the 17th percentile, in the 170s. And if he doesn't get a hit in his first at bat in their next game, he's going to be in the 160s. So he's got to figure it out, because not only is he not getting hits, he's not hitting the ball with any sort of fortitude. He's not hitting the ball hard by any stretch of the human imagination. Now, the Mets pitching remains to be very good. The starting rotation has been excellent. DeGrom and Stroman at the top of the rotation are good. Taijuan Walker's been rock solid in the middle. David Peterson has had a couple of good outings. And the bullpen, for the first time since 2016-ish, the Mets bullpen is actually good. Granted, they faltered a couple times tonight, but they still held on to win. The defense has gotten much better since the last time we spoke. Jeff McNeil made a spectacular play tonight to start a 4-6-3 double play. And it should be noted that on Saturday night, Brandon Nimmo and J.D. Davis both suffered injuries. Now, Brandon Nimmo came back today. He came in the game as a defensive replacement. But J.D. Davis sprained his hand. He's listed as day-to-day right now. I'm not sure if he has an IL stint coming. But
you know what?
But yeah, so it was a big night for the Mets. It was a big series for the Mets. They're now 6-3 against the Phillies, which is huge for them, especially if this division does come down to Mets versus Phillies. Because right now, with the way the Phillies look, yes, they're 13-15, but they're competitive, and they could be way better than that 13-15. The Braves are not pitching well, and they're not hitting well. They just lost Travis d'Arnaud. The Nationals really are not a good team. And then the Marlins are competitive, but they don't have what it takes to win this division. So right now, the early season series between the Mets and the Phillies, they've gone the Mets' way, and that's big time. I think that could help them later down the line.
Okay. Want to interrupt things just a bit because remember I was talking about Juventus? Inter Milan just won their league, and they stopped Juventus's 9-year streak. 9 straight championships.
Well, all good things must come to an end,
but that's my point.
Right
that's
now.
how dominant Juventus has been in Italy. But it gives you the idea that every league has this one team that wins more than everybody.
Yeah,
but let's go back. Going back to the Mets.
Yeah.
Going back to the Mets.
How come you neglected to mention the New England Patriots earlier? Because that team is hated worldwide. That team, I bet you could go to Europe and find people who hate the New England Patriots.
Because I've been around long enough to remember when they were pitied.
Yeah.
That's why I remember. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unbelievable. When you think about really how bad like the Patriots and the Chicago Bulls were without the GOATs, I mean, whether you think LeBron or Michael Jordan is the GOAT is, that's a discussion for another day. But, teams like the Bulls and the Patriots, they're historically not good franchises, but they had their years in the sun, and those years were pretty long sustained. The Bulls not as long as the Patriots. The Patriots were 20 years. The Bulls were about 10 years. But still, that is actually. I'm glad that you said that, Matt, because that's a relevant point that everybody neglects to remember that Tony Eason was their quarterback in a Super Bowl while they were on the losing end of the biggest blowout ever, one of the biggest blowouts.
The Bears.
Yeah, the Bears. That's right. And the Bears haven't won a ring since.
Zach remembers this. You know how we talk about the women's lacrosse team here at Stony Brook? That we're always talking about how many goals they're going to win by because they're that good. And I brought up the Saturday Night Live sketch where the term "Da Bears" came from. It goes way back into the 1980s, 1990s when Mike Ditko was still coach, called Bill Swirsky's Superfans, and where they started talking about "Da Bears," doubles, and again on YouTube, and I played it for the guys. I said, "This is what we sound like when we talk about women's lacrosse at Stony Brook." When they're going to win by 50 goals, something like that. And we were talking about a bunch of drunk guys in a Chicago bar. But the whole point is that they've been that dominant. And
yeah, I mean, you got to call a spade, right? But, I mean, we could be as could be as biased as you want, but at the end of the day, 51 wins in a row, not having lost a game since 2016?
Exactly.
I mean, what do you call that then? What do you call that? If you don't call it dominant, if you don't call it historic, what do you call it? But yeah, anyway, I know we just digressed, but back.
But here's the point.
I want to mention something about the Mets too, and then.
But I will say one last thing about the Patriots.
Go ahead.
When I said I remember when they were pitied, the Jets are today's Patriots. They're pitied. But if you're a Jet fan,
I mean, come on.
If you're a Jet fan, there is hope. Yeah. And the hope is that someday, maybe in this draft, you never know because they're getting high marks for it, that they will turn it around. I mean, the Giants were pitiful. I mean, in the 70s, they had a great defense in the late 1970s. Warner Wolf, the sports guy on Channel 2 at the time, called their offense the prevent offense because the offense was so bad.
That's so funny. Oh, my God.
And then then they got LT, and the defense became legendary but they didn't start winning Super Bowls until the offense followed behind them.
Right.
Sims, Hostetler, Joe Morris, Phil McConkey, all those guys. But again,
Otis Anderson.
The offense was good enough. They were a ball control offense because they wanted to give the defense a rest, but they didn't let the team down. And that made the Giants into a great team.
Old school football.
And the knock on Eli Manning in more recent years is that people were comparing him to those giant offenses with Sims and Hostetler, who were good, but not Hall of Famers. Neither one's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, Sims did have that historic 22 of 25 passing game in the Super Bowl and led to
this is true. But that's MVP. A perfect example.
But that's the best game of his career, and the second best is not close. So, yeah.
Exactly.
But go ahead, Matt. Go on, because I don't mean
the point remains is that that as a result of those great defenses, the offenses historically have not gotten much love from the Hall of Fame committees or anything like that. The great Giant players, except in the previous era, Frank Gifford, we're talking about 50s and 60s, for the most, Y.A. Tittle, we're talking way back.
Yeah, the Fearsome Force.
Offensive players in the Hall of Fame from the Giants, that's how far back you have to go.
Yeah, that's definitely a flip to the History Channel for that one. But anyway, so I do want to mention this one other thing that happened with the Mets, because it was an eventful weekend for the Mets in Philadelphia. So a hard-throwing left-handed relief pitcher named Jose Alvarado for the Philadelphia Phillies, he sparked some bad feelings between the Mets and Phillies a couple of weeks ago. He's wild. He's known to not hit the strike zone. He's also known to hit batters and to not even hit his catcher. He's known to hit the backstop quite a bit, which he did again tonight. But a couple of weeks ago, he didn't have his control down. He never really does, and he threw the ball over Michael Conforto's head, and then on the next pitch, he hit Michael Conforto on the hand. Now, it wasn't Conforto who was pissed, but it was Dom Smith from the dugout who was very angry and shouted some things out at Alvarado, who then shouted back. Now, fast forward to last night on Saturday, rather 2 nights ago on Friday, Dom Smith came up with runners on base and a chance to give the Mets the lead, facing, guess who, Jose Alvarado. Now, Alvarado struck out Dom swinging and then proceeded to taunt him. Dominic Smith was walking back to the dugout, and Jose Alvarado followed him and talked a lot of trash. The benches cleared. Dom was ready to fight, and in the post-game interview, he called out Jose Alvarado and said, if he has a problem, he can come and see me. Now, tonight was poetic justice. Tonight, when the Mets were rallying for their 6 runs in the top of the 8th inning, Jose Alvarado came up, faced 3 batters, got no outs, issued 3 walks, gave the Mets the lead by walking Conforto with the bases loaded, and allowed 3 earned runs. On top of that, he has been suspended for 3 games. He's only playing right now because you're allowed to play while you're appealing a suspension. I don't see him beating that appeal because the video shows that Jose Alvarado clearly instigated the benches clearing argument. It was an argument, not a fight. No punches were thrown. But he clearly instigated it when it didn't need to be. And that bit him in the butt tonight as the Mets were able to take 2 of 3 from the Phillies. And I believe he ended up being the losing pitcher in tonight's game. I might be wrong on that. I think that was David Hale.
I was talking to someone about guys like Alvarado.
Yeah.
And way back in the day, and not too long ago, maybe 10 years ago, was that recent, you had 2 kinds of pitchers. Guys who threw hard and were wild, and guys who threw not quite so hard but had control.
Right.
So when you run to a Jacob deGrom who throws hard and has control,
it's unhittable.
He's unhittable.
Yeah.
But these guys are all over the place. Well, another great story. Again, we're going back 25 years. We're going back to the 90s Yankees. Okay. Armando Benitez is pitching for the Orioles. He plunks Tino Martinez right between the 2 and the 4 on his back. And he's basically like, I don't give a whatever. And Tino's saying, oh, yeah? Benches clearing brawl. And, yes, punches are thrown. And Darryl Strawberry's with the Yankees at the time. And he's looking for people to beat up. He's going into the Baltimore dugout looking for people to punch out. But I'm in the press box watching this, and George is behind me, like a spectator at a boxing match.
Was
said,
he?
Get him, guys! Yeah.
I was gonna say, was he rooting for them to fight? Because it's funny that you say that, because Ron Darling, he's fantastic in his second career. I mean, he was a good pitcher for the Mets, but he's really had a Hall of Fame second career as the Mets color commentator, along with Keith Hernandez, beside Gary Cohen. And on Friday night, right after the argument, right after the confrontation, Ron Darling had said, Dom should have just gone and got him. He should have popped him. That was classless. And really, I think so too. I mean, because at that point, yes, you're going to get suspended. You're not going to get suspended long term. You're going to get suspended for three-ish games, But at that point, it's about principle, and you got to set a tone, man. You can't be letting these teams think, oh, well, we can have our way with the Mets. If we want to get aggressive, we can. Dom should have thrown a punch right between the eyes. Even if he loses that fight, at least he shows that the Mets can still fight. Because every time in the past couple of years that the Mets have had a chance to fight or to be aggressive, they've been passive. And they've just been such dweebs about it. Like, remember in 2016 when Chase Utley in 2015 clearly when he took out Ruben Tejada in that playoff game, he clearly meant to tackle him, and he broke his leg. Okay, fast forward to 2016, the next time they meet, Syndergaard doesn't throw at him in his first at-bat. Then in his second at-bat, instead of hitting him, he throws behind him. Now, Noah Syndergaard has the control to hit a batter. Why do something passive-aggressive and purposely miss him just to scare him? No, screw that. Hit him. He broke Tejada's leg. At that point, it's not out of line to just hit him. You know?
Not only that, there's never a reason. You don't need to give a reason to hit Chase Utley.
No,
every Met fan hates Chase Utley. The pesky pole in right field. The pesky pole in right field at Fenway. He's named after Johnny Pesky.
Yes.
I started calling the pole in right field at Citi Field the Utley pole because he used to hit balls down the right field line that Met hitters should have been hitting that just made it past it.
Yeah.
So Utley was Met killer extraordinaire.
Yeah,
that's why everybody hated him. Forget about brawls like that.
Right.
Hit him anyway.
Right.
But anyway, as going back even further than that, 2000 World Series.
Oh, okay. I know where this is going.
Clemens at Piazza. Yeah. And he also does the regular season. Pulls a red top of the helmet.
Yes, he hit Piazza in the head, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yes.
And then later in the World Series,
and Piazza did nothing.
Yeah, right, exactly. He threw a bat at you. I've never seen more of a reason to go and pop someone than they threw a bat at you. And Clemens' excuse did not bail him out. You know what he said? He said, I thought it was the ball. Oh, so you meant to throw the ball at him instead? Really?
Well, he's roid raging. What can I tell you? But the whole point was that Piazza's not a small guy.
No, he should have just gone in there and taken him out. Well, maybe he doesn't win the fight. Again, Clemens is roided out of his skull, but set a tone. Stop being little brother. Stop letting Jose Alvarado bully you. Punch him in his mouth. You miss 3 games because you're suspended. He misses 10 games because his jaw has to be rewired. Okay?
Right.
Do something like that. It's a rivalry anyway.
Here's the situation with Piazza. Piazza was too nice.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, Piazza's a very nice guy. If you meet him, he's an absolute sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah.
Does not want to beat anybody up, even though he could.
Right.
Big dude. Hit a lot of home runs.
Yeah.
Best hitting catcher ever.
Yeah.
But Piazza, I mean, people were just getting frustrated with him. Do something about this.
Right. And it's New York. Come on. We want to see some grit. We want to see the 86 bad boys come back. We want Lenny Dykstra to blow a line of cocaine and then come out and just
Gary
we want to
Carter,
see that again. Right.
Gary Carter would have clocked them. Keith Hernandez would have clocked them.
Yes. I mean, there was a night they were down in Houston playing the Astros that year in 86 and Ronnie, Lenny Dykstra, and someone else, it might have been Ray Knight, got arrested because that's just what they did. They were the Mets. That was who the Mets were.
Oh, the jokes about the Mets. The Met baseball cards have side profiles on them. You know, they were like mugshots and side profiles and numbers. Yeah.
Oh,
the Mets, that team was, first of all, other teams didn't like them because they had an attitude.
Right.
Matter of fact, it was Mike Schmidt who said the Mets had a quote-unquote Gary Carter attitude.
Yeah.
And they said Gary Carter had an attitude.
Everybody on that team was scrappy, man. Wally Backman.
It had swagger.
All of them.
It had swagger.
Kevin Mitchell, came from some bad backgrounds. I mean, you did not want to screw with that guy, especially when he got to San Francisco. All right, but although talking about the bad boy Mets and how they should have reincarnated themselves on Friday night, we do have to switch gears. Let's just gloss over the NBA. So it was a big week for both New York NBA teams. The Nets clinched a playoff berth. The Knicks are still holding on to that 4 seed. Now, the Nets have lost the last 2 games to Portland, and they lost to the Bucks earlier today in Milwaukee. Played a very good game, very competitive. And Kevin Durant is back. It's like he never missed a beat. Each of his last 2 games, he's scored 42 points. He's the most dangerous scorer ever. And across town, 20 minutes away, the Knicks had their 9-game winning streak snapped versus the Phoenix Suns on Monday, but they bounced back with a win versus the Chicago Bulls, the aforementioned Chicago Bulls. And I believe they won earlier tonight in Houston. They were winning by 15 last time I checked, but that was before the show even began. Yes, the Knicks blew out the Rockets tonight, 122-97. So the Knicks have won 2 in a row. There's 36-28 on the year now. And it's really nice now that New York's got 2 good NBA teams because most of the time, New York doesn't have 2 good any teams. Sometimes they have 0 good any teams. So, it's refreshing that New York has become a basketball town again. Right. Yeah, it's nice that New York is once again a basketball town. Next week, the Knicks will play the final 5 games of their 6-game road trip. Well, they'll actually play those games over the next 2 weeks. For this upcoming week, the Knicks play at the Memphis Grizzlies tomorrow night, at the Denver Nuggets Wednesday night, and then they rematch with the Phoenix Suns in Phoenix on Friday. Now,
that's just really going to be a really tough road trip, but one that's really going to battle them for how well they can do once the playoffs come.
Right, and we'll see who the real Knicks are this week. I think the Knicks have a good chance to maybe they don't win any of the. They should beat Memphis, but maybe they don't win any of the other games. But they've got a chance. They are very competitive. Remember how competitively they've played the Nets this year. They're 0-3 against the Nets, but they could be 3-0. They're competitive. They're scrappy. I think that they're going to pull one of these out this week, and then on the Nets half, they stay in Milwaukee. They're going to rematch them on Tuesday. And then they go to Dallas to take on Luka Magic and the Dallas Mavericks on Thursday. Then they play the Denver Nuggets in Denver on Saturday, which could be a potential NBA Finals preview.